Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt McGachy, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians, talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped an amazing episode with Mike Barino from Audio Technica Canada. There's this episode and over 430 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
It's Throwback Thursday. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Throwback Thursday. We're trying something new here, Chris.
Yeah, we've been getting some messages and some DMs and some Facebook posts in our group where people ask for guests that we've already had. I can't really just assume that everyone's going to go back through our back catalog and listen to old episodes, but you should, because the episodes are evergreen. You can listen to them 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and the story behind the song remains the same.
That's right, Chris. You know, not everyone is a podcast aficionado such as yourself. When I got into this, I didn't know much about it. And yeah, you can go on to whatever app you use to hear podcasts and go back in time. And all the episodes, like Chris said, are evergreen. They're going to be out there forever, which takes us back to this first episode we're doing in honor of the Mighty Mighty Bosstones, who just announced their breakup. We're going to rewind back to March 8th, 2021, episode number 41 with Dicky Barrett and Joe Gittleman, breaking down the impression that I get.
Yeah, we're going to save people the effort of having to scroll for like 20 seconds back to episode 41. And we're going to play this again in honor of the legacy of an amazing band. So without any further ado, here's episode 41 featuring Dicky Barrett and Joe Gittleman of the Mighty Mighty Bosstones.
Hey, rude boys and rude girls, have we got a good one for you today? My friends Dicky Barrett and Joe Gittleman from the Mighty Mighty Bosstones dropped by to discuss their breakout hit single, The Impression That I Get, taken from their 1997 album, Let's Face It. Dicky shares the very personal inspiration behind the lyrics and the song's inception. Joe takes us back to their humble rehearsal space in Boston, where the song was initially crafted, and surprisingly explains to me that, at the time, it just felt like another song in their repertoire. I brought up the fact that an old manager of mine told me a story about the song's meaning that I always believed to be true, and as it turns out, she wasn't too far off. And we dive into the brand new Bosstones single, The Final Parade, taken from their upcoming new studio album that features the who's who of the ska community. For all this and more, grab your pork pie hat and dust off that suit. We'll see you on the dance floor.
Hey, have you heard? Krista makes a podcast. Hey, have you heard? Krista makes a podcast. Hey, have you heard? Krista makes a podcast. Hey, have you heard? Krista makes a podcast.
You know, I was trying to put together an intro for you guys this morning. I don't even know where I would start to introduce Dicky Barrett and Joe Gittleman from the Mighty Mighty Bosstones from a personal standpoint. For my listeners, I'm sure 99.9% of you know who the Mighty Mighty Bosstones are. I am super stoked to have you guys on the show today, and Dicky and Joe have agreed to break down the impression that I get, and we're also, at the end of the episode, later on, we're going to talk about their brand new single that I was fortunate enough to be featured on, and very excited about it, The Final Parade.
Yes. We're going to break these down, but we got to leave time to put them back together. We can't just leave them heaped on the floor.
No,
okay?
We don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. The impression that I get, released on the record Let's Face It on March 11th, 1997, produced by Paul Koldery and Sean Slade, and this was your fifth full-length record. Band was formed in 1983. First record, Devil's Night Out, was in 89. I first heard that record in 1990. You guys toured at that point more than any band. That you were just a total blueprint for what Less Than Jake wanted to do. I saw you probably a dozen times before we got on the 97 Warped Tour when Impression was blowing up. So between Question the Answers in 1994 and 1997 when Let's Face It was released, do you guys remember when Impression was written?
I remember writing Impression. shortly before the record came out, I guess, within a year's time of before the record came out, me and Joe got together, and Joe had the music and I had some lyrics, and it was at a time where you couldn't, send files to each other. Or you had to be in the same room, and you walked away maybe with a boombox cassette that you tried to write to at home. And I can remember that. I remember writing the lyrics at a friend's brother's funeral, and we were at their house in Canton, Massachusetts. And I was sitting on the porch, and it was a young guy, very young guy, maybe 2 years older than me. And he passed away young. And the family was just devastated, as you would well imagine. And so I started writing the lyrics then, kind of, trying to undo the Rubik's Cube that is loss and pain and things like that. And what it meant to me and what it meant to the family and what I was witnessing. So put together these lyrics. I didn't want them to be too much, but I didn't want them to not say anything. And it was more poetry than anything else. And then it was time to make a record. And I said, well, I have these. And we started working on it. Joe can jump in at any time, but so many different things were going on at that time. We were sort of being challenged. Up until then, we had been making like anti-song records. Like if it felt too much like a song or what's been done in the past, then we would scrap it. Or if we had a good groove going, we'd say, all right,
and enough of that,
let's kick somebody in the balls. And that's sort of what the punk ska thing was all about. It was we'll lull people into a false sense of security and then hit them over the head with something. We loved songwriting, we loved songs, but that we felt we could fuck them up better than we could at an early age, better than we could actually make them. So then we just felt challenged. We were like, people are letting us do this. We're making records. People are coming to see us play, and they're calling us songwriters. So let's maybe get a little bit serious. So that sort of was going on at the same time. When we're starting to write Let's Face It, there was a new president at the record label that we ended up on, and it was Danny Goldberg, who's known for Nirvana and managing Nirvana and sort of legendary in the industry. And he challenged me, and he said, you're afraid to make a good record and you're afraid to make good songs.
Wow.
And he knew where to hit me, because to this day, being afraid is it's just not in my vocabulary. And he was, and he kept saying that to me. And I gave him a bunch of fuck yous, and I'm not afraid of anything. Then I thought about it, and the other guys in the band were anxious to start writing songs that is in a more traditional sense. So that's what we were doing. And it was a little bit awkward, like walking in mud at first and going, like so many things at that time is like people like the ska music all of a sudden turning into death metal. So, should we change that formula? Who knows? But then we started to get into it and started to enjoy it. And Joe can tell you, I'm an insane fan of like Radio Gold and all the hits of the 70s, and songs are always kind of been really important to me. So that's what we were doing. Joe, you still there?
I'm here, Dick.
Am I boring you?
I'm just listening. I'm learning a lot. I'm learning.
I am too. Take it away, Dickie. This is great.
Anyway, so a lot of the stuff I wrote was very wordy. It was word gymnastics or word salad, where the words would just keep coming at you, and I love that. And I thought that's what I did the best was writing words and putting words together. And I felt like a word blacksmith. I would hammer this word in there and go, oh wow. And that was what I had to offer, because they were really getting good through all the road work. And you mentioned the road work, and that was all Joe. Joe just figured that out and stuffed us all in a van, and off we went, and never came home. They were getting great at it and really, really good. But if I called myself mediocre, people would debate that singer. But I knew that I could put words together, and that's what I was offering.
Basically, long story short, Dick and I have been trying to figure out ways to run from real life for a long time now, and that is a lot of that has come down to writing songs.
Yeah.
If
we had to write songs, then we will.
What do we got to do?
Yeah.
Well, I got to jump in here. You know, your first 4 records, and if you include Scott Core, The Devil and More, the EP, you know, your first 5 records, it was just boom, boom. It was 89, 91, 92, 93, 94. Then, of course, you guys stuffed in the Lollapalooza tour in 95. There was a lot going on. So, you know, this was your longest gap between records up to that point, 94 to 97. Joe, do you remember your initial reaction when you saw the lyrics from Dicky, what you thought of them?
Good question. You know, I can remember very clearly in the studio the first time that scream into the chorus came in.
Yeah.
Like that was something that really changed the song for me, you know. I will say though, just from my end, just on the composing on the music side of it and the melodies and the bits that I kind of, you know, little whistling things that I brought to the table with Dick. That intro, you know, when I was that guitar lick for the intro of Impression, I didn't really realize at the time, it took me a while, but I knew I was trying to kind of figure out something that actually is only a chord or 2 away from a Pachelbel canon in D, that wedding kind of chord progression.
Yeah.
He was a German-born composer, Johann Pachelbel, in the 1600s.
I know that, Joe. I know.
Yeah. Well, we did the Warped Tour with him. We did the Warped Tour with him early on.
He wasn't on the main stage, but he was there. I check him out.
He was the barbecue band. I think it was the barbecue band.
I know this stuff, Professor.
So listen, it's a song that is very commonly played. It's a formal song played at weddings. Perhaps listeners of this podcast will remember it from Dude, Where's My Car? It was also, you can also see it in there.
Does anybody ever remember the sequel to Dude, Where's My Car? Seriously, Dude, Where's My Car?
Is there any chance you guys would ever make a sequel?
There's a script for it. There is actually a script. It's called Seriously, Dude, Where's My Car? Which is the appropriate title.
That's the perfect sequel title.
It's just it's never got home yet. It just hasn't gotten to a place where like people are like, yeah, let's make it.
Right.
I mean, I would do it.
What I remember, Joe, is and I say about the studio, and I don't mean the recording studio, I mean our practice space, and we were sitting down, and you know we wanted to write simpler choruses, but I just couldn't scale down that chorus. And you were like, you know, can't you just have it come up with like, you know, 3 or 4 words, come up with one solid message, and then we'll repeat that. And I couldn't do it like that. Never had to knock on wood, how it just kept, the words just kept coming at you. And then it kind of soured me on the song. And then I'm like, which, you know, until it started blowing up, I was so unsure of it, you know. And an interesting thing, you mentioned that scream. That scream was Paul Coldry and Sean Slade had just had some success with that song "Creep" by Radiohead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and you know that guitar noise that sets up the up the chorus.
Special, but I'm a creep.
They got really excited about it. And they go, "Oh, good, we have something to set up the chorus like Creep." So that scream is sort of their trick that they did twice. You know, that guitar noise and my scream are the same sort of, here comes the chorus.
Well, but your scream was so you. It's so Bosstones, and I just have to say right now that you know the '90s were a big time. You know, cries of sellout if you signed to a major label, if you got on the radio, and you know I'm sure you guys might have dealt with some of that. But I'm telling you the honest truth. I don't recall one person in the scene that I knew that ever had a bad thing to say about you when this song hit. We were all proud of you. You guys were gods to us. You still are. You're the godfathers of ska punk. And it's like,
thank you.
No, and it's like when this song hit, you couldn't cry sellout. This was just to me like this was a sister sibling or brother or sibling song to something like Someday I Suppose.
I come back someday and find her. Maybe I will. I should write down a reminder. One day, who knows? Someday I
It was just the next step up from that. I mean, that song was to me was a radio hit.
It felt that way, but we still that and you know, with the 1-2 punch of that and Clueless, it was like we were almost challenging people to call us sellouts. But the fact of the matter remained is we did what we wanted, exactly what we wanted to do when we wanted to do it, and that was just the natural progression. That's what we were heading, and that continues, you know, to be quite honest with you.
Right, but it's just remarkable that, you know, 10 plus years into your career that this happens, and it just goes to show you, I mean, how much road work you guys did, how much time you played. I saw you in hole-in-the-wall dives to arenas to everything in between up to this point, and you put in the work.
You played with us in hole-in-the-wall dives.
I remember Janice Landing. That was like early 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was August 13th, 1994.
It was so cool. That was such a cool show and such an incredible place. Your scene and everybody there and the Janice Landing people, it was great.
Yeah, we had to beg Tony Refugiato, who's known as Daddy Cool, the promoter down there. We had to beg him to get on that show. And actually, a local Tampa band, Magadog, had the show, and they had to drop off last minute, and he gave me a call. That was our first big break, was getting in front of your crowd that night, and I'll never forget it. And I owe you guys
I felt like it was your crowd.
Well, we have maybe had some fans there, but that was the biggest thing we had ever done, and we'll never forget it. I want to jump into the song now and talk about that intro guitar riff. Is just, in terms of a ska song, that riff is just, it's iconic. It's a 20-second intro. At some point, the band jumps in with just one of the catchiest horn lines ever. Just makes you want to dance. And we come into the first verse, and the lyric is, have you ever been close to tragedy or been close to folks who have? Have you ever felt a pain so powerful, so heavy you collapse? No? Well, and then there's the big I, the big scream. And so if you can set up that first verse of, you know, I know you had mentioned that your friend had passed away, but this is just what you were feeling on the porch that day?
You know, by the time you get to me, you've already got cavities. There's so many hooks and so much. The horn part would be enough to start a song. The guitar part would be enough. I mean, Joe just was relentless, and that's why, you know, it's almost a talking verse, you know, which is I'm more than capable of doing. But everything that introduces it is so melodic, and props to my buddy who writes like that, and it was, by the time you hit that, it was, you know, I could say anything, and we were off to the races. But the first verse is more personal on an individual. That's what my friend, my high school and longtime still friend Brian, was going through, and at that time, his own personal loss. The second verse is more universal and has to do more with our generation, you know, of us, you know, being able to be a ska band and load into a van in the 90s, and things were, you know, and now, I mean, I guess now is the answer to that question, you know, is, you know, the state of the world now, maybe there's never been anything like this before, and this is our challenge, you know. But
I just wanted to jump in and mention we were really aware of the fact that we were lucky to be able to do what we were doing, you know, and like we were crossing into Canada to play Foon Foon Electrique, like when the Iraq War was starting, you know what I mean? And we were in our early 20s at that point, early to mid 20s. So, you know, we were definitely aware that like there were other people who were sacrificing more than us, and we were just kind of, you know, we kind of were aware that we were just guys playing music, you know, and that other people had faced a lot more than we had, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I'd also like to talk about this first verse, well, through the whole song, but I've mentioned it on this show before, when you can hear a song within a song, and I got to give you props, Joe. That bass line is just, it is so good. It's just, I can zone into just that bass part and get off on that without even listening to the rest of the song. It is, it's awesome, man.
Ever been close to tragedy or been close to folks who have? Have you ever felt the pain so powerful, so heavy you collapse?
Right on, thank you.
Somebody broke down the song one time on a show where they just kind of played track by track, the different tracks, And then when it got to the bass line, I was like, oh my God, it does definitely completely stand on its own. But for me, and being able to, having worked with Joe for a long time, there's so many of his bass lines that do just that. So,
And when you a lot of times when you have bass lines that busy and other genres of music, they'll step on the vocal. You can get away with it if it's a great bass line in ska more often than other genres for whatever reason. And this bass line just sits there and it doesn't fight the vocal. It doesn't fight what the band's doing. It's so great.
I mean, I think that's also about the vocal. Those chords are moving fast. They're not staying put very long. The bass is doing a lot, but that vocal melody really is just sort of, built around a few notes,
Mm-hmm.
I think, too, if you have a vocalist that you actually want to step on, then that's helpful, too. That's,
I wouldn't want to step on you, Dick, but
thank you.
Something I noticed when I was dissecting the song at 38 seconds. This is quick. You're into this first chorus, and yeah, there's a lot of info here. There's a lot of words, but I don't know if you could have scaled this back. I can't see this being anything but it was. And the lyric is, I've never had to knock on wood, but I know someone who has, which makes me wonder if I could. It makes me wonder if. I've never had to knock on wood, and I'm glad I haven't yet, because I'm sure it isn't good. That's the impression that I get. And I'll never forget Less Than Jake's first manager. She had told me that this song was about abortion. And for years, I thought that that's what it was. And up until probably today, I never was for certain of that, but I never heard another explanation of this song. Never had to knock on wood. I hope my girlfriend's not pregnant type of thing. So to hear you talk about the song now is just funny to me. For 25 years, my old manager couldn't have been more wrong. But that line, I've never had to knock on wood.
No, not really.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe she was onto something.
Hey everybody, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with part 2 of this special Throwback Thursday episode with Dicky and Joe from the Bosstones after a few words from our sponsors.
The number you have reached is 100.7 WMMS.
It wasn't just a radio station, it was a lifestyle.
Cleveland is a rock and roll city for sure.
Yeah! Down! The Wrath of the Buzzard. WMMS. Cleveland.
The rise and fall of one of the most iconic radio stations in America. Profiles, The Wrath of the Buzzard, PROH Files. Subscribe now wherever you get podcasts.
And now, back to the show.
Well, here's the story. Is when we released it initially, it was for a benefit compilation that we were involved in putting out. There had been some shootings at women's healthcare facilities, women's healthcare facility in the Boston area. And so this compilation was called Safe and Sound. It came out before Let's Face It. And that's actually like that we put out that compilation and the song started to get played there.
I remember the label got mad at us.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? It's like, we didn't know. And I think that kind of is testimony to the fact that I had been sort of soured. There's some other good songs on that Let's Face It record. So to me, I'd sort of lean towards, 1 to 8 or some of those kind. So I didn't know about Impression. And it also felt so personal. A lot of people too think that, it's the 90s too. So that the tested part, I've never been tested, was about AIDS testing, getting an AIDS test at the time. And I didn't ever, if someone said, it's about, women's healthcare rights. And I never said, no, it's not. Or in the same thing with, HIV or AIDS. If someone said, if it meant something to somebody who was suffering that way, then I never took that away from anybody either. So,
yeah, that's an interesting perspective because you don't want to.
It's supposed to mean something to whatever it means to you, it means to you, and I wouldn't want to be so arrogant as to say, it only means this. So.
Gotcha. Well, after the first chorus, we come back into just the band reintro that was at the top with the reintro of the horn line. Just so catchy. We get into verse number 2. Have you ever had the odds stacked up so high you need a strength most don't possess? Or has it ever come down to do or die? You've got to rise above the rest. No? Well, and then the scream again. And so set up this verse.
That verse, I wanted to get Rise Above in it, and for Black Flag. So I wrote.
Nice. Nice.
I promise you, that's the truth.
Rise above, we're gonna rise above. They distort what we say. Rise above, we're gonna rise above. Try to stop what we do. Rise above, we're gonna rise above.
I wanted to get that in there, and then I wrote the rest of it. Rise above, like what did rise above mean to me, and what does, and had I ever risen above anything? And when I start writing lyrics and I start putting things, I think of other people's lyrics and what that, are important lyrics to me. And then, so I guess you could say I stole Rise Above and having nothing to do with anything that Black Flag was saying. And then I built around that. But in fairness, it comes down to Do or Die. Ken Casey stole that from me and named his first record Do or Die.
Your dreams are intentional and burn, burn, burn. Until they come wherever I got it through. Oh, die. It's not a rebel die. You're some socialist.
The Dropkick Murphys, old Ken Casey comes to the stole your lyric.
He told me that on the thread one
time. We get into chorus number 2, same lyrics as chorus number 1. And then there's an 8-second musical interlude that only happens for this part, which is now the bridge. And then there's 10 seconds, which is basically the bridge is the intro guitar chords, and it's a breakdown. And the lyric is, I'm not a coward, I've just never been tested. I like to think that if I was, I would pass. Look at the tested and think, there but for the grace go I. Might be a coward, I'm afraid of what I might find out.
Yeah.
I love that lyric.
Thank you.
Talk about that. It just works so well.
It's saying what I had said earlier is I know I'm not afraid, but then it kind of it flips back to, well, have I ever really had anything to be afraid of? And I also, cocky, arrogant, Boston guy,
belly full of booze,
high as a kite, and just feeling it. No. And I thought, that there were a few challenges if presented to me that I couldn't handle. But the truth of the matter is, in my more quieter and more kind of reflective moments, or I guess I just really don't know. And you don't know until it is, So you can go around saying, yeah, bring it on. But, you don't know until you know or until it happens. So that's what I was sort of saying. It's sort of lyrically hedging your bets and at the same time,
being honest. I think just being honest that you really don't know,
Yeah, that's what I would assess here. This to me is an honest lyric, and I love that line number 1.
I feel like I was dishonestly being honest.
I love how line number 1 says, I'm not a coward, and the start of line 4 says, might be a coward. So you're questioning yourself there, and that's what I love about the lyric.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chris. This is a difficult podcast because all the things you're saying mean a lot because you're not a chump.
Thank you.
You're a guy that's done it, and been there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. I noticed that when we come out of the bridge, you say what I might find out, and there's no scream. It just launches right back in to the third chorus.
Yeah.
Was there ever talk about a scream being there or to set that up, or never talked about?
I don't think we ever talked about that.
I think I had trouble putting those lyrics in. I didn't have time for a scream. I was trying to rhythmically get that part down.
Couple of quick questions. So at what point you're in the rehearsal space in Boston, you got the band in there, the horn section's fired up, they got their part. And was this just another song on the record at that point, another one in the bunch, or did you ever feel at that point we have something here?
It was, honestly, Chris, it was in the maybe pile for a long time, to be honest with you.
Wow. No kidding.
We wrote a lot of songs for that record.
That's true. And there was the scream too, to go backwards a little bit. The scream too could have been out of, frustration and like, where is, it might be the last of my great screams. People to this day go, oh, there's not enough Dickie's monster voice on the Bosstones record. But I felt like I made enough of those records that I sort of wanted to start doing something a little different. But the scream was sort of like, a little bit out of frustration in the process of it all.
Well, and what the fans don't realize is you still have to scream 15 to 16 to 20 times during a live show. So
I know that too. I was trying to make my work a little bit easier. The ending part, if not to move this too fast on you, that was mocking the horn part. Towards the end, the saxophone all of a sudden starts playing this sort of different melodic idea, and then I sort of mocked that in a way that everybody liked.
I love that part. We'll talk about this real quick, and then I have one more question about what Paul and Sean, the producers, thought, and we'll get to that in a second. But third chorus, same as the other choruses. Then it has the reintro again. The reintro horn part comes in, and there's the sax that Dick was talking about just now. It comes in playing the chorus melody. Gives me chills every time I hear it, and then it breaks down. The B3 organ comes in.
Never had to I better knock on wood, 'cause I know someone who has, which makes me wonder if I could. It makes me wonder if I never had to I better knock on wood, 'cause I'm sure it isn't good, and I'm glad I haven't yet. That's the impression that I get.
And it's almost got this hymnal church vibe that just takes over, this beautiful, and this is unlike anything you guys had done at this point. The ending of this song, how did that come together? Because it's a really odd way to end a song that's this heavy, but it works on an epic level.
That's a good question. It's one of those kind of magic studio sort of moments where it was maybe we hadn't thought of how we were going to end it,
right?
And then we probably sent Kevin in and said, what do you got? And he laid that down.
Well, that's the same part from the top. So it's the same horn part from the top, just sort of played one guy, a little bit different feeling, So
a little more soulful.
I agree with Dicky completely. It's likely that we just kind of played on. I mean, if you were to really pull it apart and listen, the bass gets flipped around. It's playing the wrong chords on top. It's played the inverted kind of chord progression, totally unintentional. Either a mistake from doing the overdubs or just like we tracked it and didn't notice that. I think was sort of special thing, but very well in today's day and age might have been something where we just edited that, made it shorter, that end or something. But we're working on tape at that point, so when you record to tape that way, you're kind of like a little bit more married to those decisions, and so the length of the song is a little bit more fixed. And so then your conversations go to how are you going to use that space. And so, like Dicky says, hey, let's bring back that little lick from the top, and then Dicky added those extra lyrics sort of in the same kind of melody, and then the whole thing just went away. In today's day and age, we might have cut that and made it shorter or something.
Well, it's so personal, that last line, the way that you just say, and you're just kind of talking. That's the impression that I get. It feels so personal, like you're in the room listening to somebody talk that to you, speak that to you. It's such a great way to end a song. When you brought the song to Paul Koldery and Sean Slade, the producers, what did they think of it? And as you were building the track, was there any excitement at that point, or was it still just another song?
If you know Paul and Sean, there's very rarely excitement about anything. I mean, they don't get me wrong, they enjoy working on music, and I mean, they've made their lives around it, and they're super talented musicians. By the way, that organ at the end, that would be Sean Slade, I would imagine. At that point, Dick, it was probably
right?
Yeah, because that was before we started playing with Aronoff and that stuff, I think. So I think that was Sean Slade. He played some organ. They had been in some cool bands in Boston in the 80s. The Sex Execs was a band that Paul and Sean went. Super talented guys. But they don't fly too high or too low. They're like a lot of producers. They ride it and kind of keep it even because you got to get a lot of work done.
Yeah, they're good like that, and then sometimes it gets frustrating where you think you do something incredible and there's just sort of a flat line coming at you, and you're like, which keeps you grounded and things in perspective. But I think that they work hard, but I think they might not even to this day know it ever was on the radio.
No, they know. Believe me, Dick, they know.
Oh, they do. All right.
You get the record mixed, you're driving around, I'm assuming listening to a cassette at this point. That's what we did in the 90s. And you're listening to the record in context. Did it at any point before the label took this to radio, did it at any point hit you that, okay, there's this song's magic?
Yeah, there was an event when we were finishing the mix. We were at the Magic Shop in New York. Mm-hmm. And at toward the end, the label brought some people in, they invited people into the studio to listen to our record or whatever. And, we had never really been in that position before. And no one wanted to hear it, but, we played the record for people. And I think after that, there was a little bit more of our A&R, Allison Hamamura, was a little bit more focused on that after that event that we had at the Magic Shop. So it was radio people and program directors and press people and maybe 50, 75 people. And they responded. Do
you remember playing the track live before the record came out?
I do, because I'll tell you why I remember that. Because we were playing with Spring Heel Jack so much that they started to put that lick into their song, the horns part. This was months before the record came out. They started comping that little lick. So I know that we played it around New England.
Fucking Pete. It was probably Pete, right?
Yeah, well,
asshole.
For those that don't know, Spring Heel Jack, Pete Wazalewski, we call him JR and Less Than Jake. He played sax in Spring Heel Jack. And of course, Mr. Chris Rhodes, our honorary member of Less Than Jake. We love him to death. He's a trombone player, of course, in the Bosstones. They were in Spring Heel Jack, and I didn't know that they ripped off your song, those bastards.
It was all in good fun.
Yeah. Well, I just remember, March the record came out. That summer we were on the Warped Tour with you guys. Our first time ever doing it. We did 2.5, 3 weeks up the East Coast, and it was just incredible. The song was blowing up that summer. It was everywhere, and just such a great sing along. And like I said, I can't recall one person having any issue. It was undeniably Bosstones. You guys did not change a damn thing about who you were, and all of us fans knew years before any of those label execs and all the number crunching idiots at the labels. We knew what was special about this band, and it happened for you guys. I'd like to get in now to the new record and the brand new single, The Final Parade. Released on January 25th of this year, 2021. The track is from your new record that's going to be, or is on Hellcat Records, and I think Tim Armstrong produced the song, correct?
Yes.
Along with Ted Hutt. They were co-producers on the project.
Okay, yeah. And Ted Hutt's been a longtime producer of you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So,
you think it's fair, Joe, to say that Tim and Rancid probably had a lot to do with the album Let's Face It being what it was as well?
I'd say so.
Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Having heard Out Come the Wolves, it was we realized, okay, it's not a crime to make good sounding songs and be a songwriter. And 30 years later, we end up working with the guy. And as Joe mentioned, producer Ted Hutt too.
Well, this song, tell me about this. An 8-minute ska song is ambitious, to say the least. So how did the song just keep growing, or what? How this whole thing begin?
When you invite 40 or 50 guests to a party, there's got to be enough room. So for starters, there's half a dozen guys from your band in there.
Yes, yeah, we got me, JR, and Roger. Of course, got Jimmy G from Murphy's Law, Toby Morrison, Rusty from H2O, John Feldman from Goldfinger, Dan Vitale from Bim Scala Bim, Dave from Big D and the Kids Table, Amy Interrupter, Tim Armstrong. The list goes on and on. It's just the who's who.
Amy Interrupter and all the Interrupters.
Yes, it's the who's who of ska. So, was the track ever like a 3-minute song, just a tune you wrote that it became this animal that it is?
The track could have been 2 3-minute songs that we Frankenstein together. It could have been a lot of things.
One of the things when you're going in the studio, likely you can relate to this, Chris, when producers want to cut, well, no more than X number of songs are we going to take into the studio with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it was a little bit of an attempt to get 2 songs disguised as one on the record.
We're really pulling back the curtain here.
It's like you guys entered into your Rush and Dream Theater prog rock phase.
One of the guys looked at me, said, he's like, well, my song is going to make the record. Calm down. I've got an idea. Hold on. We'll do it. But there can only be 13 songs. Don't worry. I'll get it in there.
To answer your question, though, your original question, it did grow when when we're waiting to see who's going to accept our invite to participate and what files we're going to get back and what people are going to sing and what they're going to send us and all that kind of stuff had us. I mean, really, it was the Rubik's Cube of our whole session. It was the thing that required the most work at the end. It was the thing that needed the most work, and it was right up crunch time. There were people that we wish we could have gotten tracks from, but ultimately. Ride or die with our squad. It was so cool that everyone was willing to participate, and it's been a really fun thing.
So cool. I mean, it made us emotional at some points that people were like, not just should I jump, but how high, and a testimony to the friendships we've made and the people that we've decided to call our friends throughout the years of doing the Mighty Mighty Bosstones. And when I say that, I certainly speak of you and less than Jake, but. At one point, Tim came in and he laid the whole thing out, and it was and this will make you feel better. It was a 15-minute song.
What?
That yes, he just had it going and going. It was, and I let him do it, and then I'm like, we can't, Tim. Yeah, and he's like, yeah, you're right.
Good impression. Well, I mean,
that's the impression that you get.
Certainly, I can't for the life of me think of many. I mean, there may have been some old dance hall reggae ska stuff that was just jams that went on for that long.
That's what we wanted it to be, was something that once you hit the dance floor, so many times, this not me, but maybe Ben would be out there dancing, and he just wants to keep going. And I think that's what we wanted, old school kind of moon stomp, and just, then this comes in, then whoa, and this giving you reason to want to stay out there and just and have it. The metamorphosis takes place is, I think that the one thing Joe said to me one time, he's like, he was reading comments and stuff of what people were saying about the song. And he said, the biggest complaint is it's not long enough. And I think that was pretty, made you feel good for sure.
No, I went down reading comments last night on YouTube. They were just so much love, so much outpouring from just your fan base, the ska community in general. And it's funny you mentioned Ben Carr. I have it in my notes here. I was thinking he's going to have to pull an oxygen tank around when you go into the song. And thank God it's not 15 minutes. It's only 8. You kill poor Ben.
We'll do it in the encore. We'll give him a break and then head out. Final break. Here we go, Ben.
So was this in your minds just a great way to set up the record by launching it as it's an ambitious first single?
Well, you know what? It was my idea to put it out there first, but I have to say the way it came together, I always imagined there would be some element of this record that would be like kind of a community record, and I think about a lot of the stuff that Tim's done with Tim Time Bomb and friends and stuff, and like it always brings a cool energy when you inject someone unexpected into the mix, and then we were in the studio and I had an interest, or we had it. We weren't going to get out of that studio without Tim singing something on this record. That was for damn sure.
You can't afford to be ignored. Next stop is Freedom Street. Hit the town, burn it to the ground, to the rock steady beat.
And that was what he wanted to sing on, and that just opened up conversations about like, well, what else could we do with it? It was just sort of like we sat there in the studio for probably a half hour, just like mapping it out, writing, the arrangement.
What we did know is because of the quarantine, we knew that people had really good set up equipment to record at home. We knew that no one was like, oh, I don't have, except for me. I don't have the proper equipment.
I know you can't talk about the name of the record yet. Do you have a release date? And do you know?
It's getting sorted out.
Getting sorted out.
We can't even say whether we have a record.
Well, I will ask this: Is this the longest song on the new album?
No, That's the shortest one.
I'm just kidding. They didn't do a double album. You did a triple album.
Yeah. We were calling that song Inescada de Vida, by the way.
Love it. So, guys, at this point, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to me. The listeners are going to just love this. You opened up about Impression. I learned a ton about the song. Meant everything, obviously, that I said about it. Congratulations on the final parade. Congratulations on still doing this at the level that you're doing it. Is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners with outside of what we talked about?
Dickie, should we sing them a little something that we've been trying to do something? Can we go to the phones? Can we go to the phones?
We got Jim on line 4.
Yeah, go for Jim. I don't know. I don't have much to say except that we're really looking forward to seeing people. Hopefully someday soon. You know, it's nice to see you. You know, we're lucky to have had this project to work on together. It was a crazy time to try and do something, and we kind of were lucky to put together a cool team of people, like the right team of people that, you know, it was just, I feel like we made something of a shitty situation, and so on that level, I'm happy, and just like people to know that we hope to see you soon, and we miss you.
Being able to connect with other musicians, many of whom are my friends, it makes me feel like I'm still out there doing it, because it's been very strange being a touring musician not to be out there and just not to be a social guy. I like to hang out and talk to my friends, so I totally relate to what you just said.
Yeah, big time. It's great to see you, man.
Great to see you too. Thank you guys so much for being on.
Thanks, bud.
Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed Throwback Thursday.
I like Throwback Thursday. I hope this encourages everyone to go back and check out some episodes you might not have listened to before, or re-listen to one that you really enjoyed.
That's right, we got a great back catalog of guests for you to enjoy. We'll see you next time.
The number you have reached is 100.7 WMMS.
It wasn't just a radio station, it was a lifestyle.
Cleveland is a rock and roll city for sure.
Yeah! Down! The Wrath of the Buzzard. WMMS. Cleveland.
The rise and fall of one of the most iconic radio stations in America. Profiles, The Wrath of the Buzzard. PROH Files. Subscribe now wherever you get podcasts.
Hey there, I am Johnny Christ from Avenged Sevenfold, and I've got a podcast called Drinks with Johnny you're going to want to check out. I sit down with a bunch of different people from all different walks of life, from professional wrestlers to actors, comedians, fighters, musicians, everything in between. I'm just looking to make some friends and have a good time doing it. So if that sounds like something you're into, go check out Drinks with Johnny, streaming everywhere now.